7 p.m. for recreation. Who's driving the boat?
And I'll start. Effingham County enlisted the services of CHA to create a comprehensive recreation and parks plan. Today, CHA has held stakeholder meetings with the rec board, administrative staff, and a joint workshop with both the county commission and rec board. Based on those observations, site assessments, and input from these various previous fact-finding discussions, they have created a phased approach to an implementation plan of a 10-year master plan. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to receive public input to this draft master plan. Based on this input we received tonight in discussion between the Board of Commissioners and Rec Board, this draft plan may be amended. After the comments are received tonight, the county will begin funding and pricing discussions internally and take a more detailed assessment at the proposed timeline. Depending on the input, depth, and breadth of these changes, the finalized master plan could be considered as early as our next commission meeting on November the 18th. A draft of the complete master plan will be reviewed and made available to the public and posted online as soon as possible. I'd like to turn it over to Patrick Graham, who will provide us with background information and walk us through the draft implementation plan.
She loading up there, Mr. Dawson?
I was thinking about it.
What you're going to present site-specific, is anything that you're going to present site-specific?
So the implementation plan is going to be more general. I do have a bubble plan and a sketch plan, which is site-specific, and just as an example of what it could look like on one of the potential sites that we discussed at the last workshop.
Okay.
So that's as site-specific as we want. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, and of course we have many members of the Rec Board and members of the public that are here tonight. And what I'd like to do is just sort of very quickly take you through where we have come to date in terms of preparing the recreation master plan, and then get into some more detail on the implementation plan itself and what some of our recommendations are based on the fact-finding work that we've done so far. And then what we'd like to do is have, that'll take about 15 minutes, and then we'll have plenty of time for folks to make comments after that, and I'll dutifully scribe down all comments that come in, and we'll make sure we get those addressed in the master plan. All right. So where we have been so far or where we're going to go tonight is, I'll give you just, we've already had the opening remarks. I'll give you a little bit of an introduction. We'll talk a little bit about the master plan process that we've been through very quickly, and then get into some of the findings of the inventory and assessment, and then spend more time at the back end talking about our recommendations and then the proposed implementation plan. Next slide, please. So as far as the master plan process, it started out with inventory and analysis. We got a lot of great help from Clarence and his staff to get data on the facilities. We visited all the different recreation facilities ourselves as well. And then beyond that point, we started looking at the existing recreation program and the use of that program, which is the existing program is extremely well used. You have a lot of teams from young children all the way up into teenage level. So a lot of use of the existing facilities. They're very heavily used, which is great. It's nothing better than an active recreation program. So what we did then was start to compare the existing facilities with some national and state level standards on recreation facilities, just based on sort of rules of thumb or basic national and state standards on the numbers and types of recreation facilities that you should have. We went through that process and then began the public involvement process almost 2 months ago now with the first public workshop that we had, where we got everybody together and got their input, and I think had some really good discussions as part of that workshop. Part of that was also, we did have some questionnaires that went out. Particularly, we got good input from the Recreation Board on those questionnaires, and then also from the commissioners. We got input from the public at the last public workshop. And pulling all of that together, we then have developed now a draft master plan, which is where we are in the process right now. Next slide, please, tell us. So just as a very basic overview of some of our findings from the inventory and assessment, looking at the existing facilities that you have in the Effingham County Recreation and Parks program, the majority of the parks that you have now are in the southern part of the county. That is also where you have most of the population in the county, so that does stand to reason. There is in terms of the usage in the program, it's heavily focused on baseball and softball. So you have a lot of baseball and softball teams, obviously, and so a lot of those type of facilities are needed in your current suite of recreation facilities. Almost all of the fields see very, very heavy use from practice all the way through games. There are 2 facilities right now where you're hosting games. That's the State Road 119 and also Sand Hill complexes. But beyond that, all of the other facilities where we start looking at, say, Pinora or Ulmer or some of the other facilities, they are used for practices. So all the facilities are used very heavily and don't see a lot of rest. And in particular, when you look at baseball and softball, not only are those fields used for those sports, but then the outfields are also used for football during different seasons. So the grass never has a chance to rest. So that was one of the things that we definitely found throughout looking at the process. The funding in terms of maintenance has been on the low side compared with national standards. So that has hampered some of the upkeep of the facilities. By and large, as you look at the different facilities, parking is not well defined really at any of the different complexes. And so that's an area where there could be some improvement. We also found that there was little to no signage at most of the parks, and so that's another area that could certainly be a helpful improvement. Toss. So those were just some of the findings, our recommendations coming out of the planning process. We do recommend adding some trails and bicycle paths, and one of the things that we have included as an appendix to the master plan is a sort of a multimodal study that's already been done. So we're suggesting to tie into that to add some trails and bicycle paths, particularly in the denser areas, maybe some paths that would connect some of the different parks. We also recommend a countywide signage plan for the parks, sort of a standardized type plan. There's an example photograph on this particular slide from another one of our clients that shows some nice signage. There are a number of the existing fields that really need to be renovated, and we'll get into some of the details on that, as well as the indoor gym facilities definitely need some renovations as well, and some of those are already included in your short-term program, so you're aware of what those requirements are. And then finally, and this really came out of looking at the facilities and the fact that in order to meet the use that is already there in the county's recreation program, you really need more fields. And when we started this process way back in the summertime, one of the first things we were looking at was to see if we could expand the State Road 119 park, and would that work? And what we found was, even with some potential options of additional land around that complex, it was just not large enough size. So then we started looking, well, in order to really get to the level that you want to be, to have adequate fields for competition and potentially have fields that would allow you to have more tournaments that would attract folks from outside of the county to come in, we really needed to start looking at a new centralized park. And that was a really great thing that came out of the discussion at the last workshop. So coming out of that discussion, we then the next step was to really sit down and after the workshop, one of the things that King and I did was meet with Clarence and the Recreation Board to really start to identify, okay, sort of two lists of things. One is a needs list. What are the critical needs for the existing facilities? And the thought being here, well, if our recommendation is a new centralized park, obviously that's going to take some time to design and to budget and would be a part of the next SPLOST program. What do we need to do in the meantime to get the current facilities up to snuff and to bridge that gap between now and when we can develop a new centralized complex? So the idea here in phase one is throughout the rest of the current SPLOST program, what are the critical things we need to do? And so this is what we talked about for the Sand Hill complex. And there's a whole list of projects up here. I'm not going to go through all of them, but these represent the types of improvements that Clarence and the Recreation Board and we agreed would be critical things to do to get Sand Hill complex up to snuff and able to sustain projects over the next number of years. And ranging from doing a septic drain field to adding netting to the backstops, and then replacing the dirt in the infields. One of the problems there is that the existing dirt that is there is getting extremely compacted. Basically sort of like concrete, and so what we would recommend is excavating that dirt out and then replacing it with a better mix of material, and so on and so forth. So this is the number of different types of improvements we're suggesting at Sand Hill Complex. Thomas. Continuing on in phase one, so this is still over the next 3 years. We also identified some critical needs at State Road 119, which is to renovate the restrooms and concessions there, and also add a lightning prediction and warning system. And then finally, in phase one, we're recommending a project that is on your short-term program now, which is to repair and refinish the wooden court at the Central Learning Center gym. Now, phase two would correspond to the beginning of the next SPLOST program, so starting in 2017, and then going for a 5-year period, so up to 2022. So this is generally to correspond with a new 5-year SPLOST period. And it would begin with a project that you've already looked at before at State Road 119, which is to refurnish and renovate and expand the current gymnasium that's there. So that's what we're proposing there. And then the rest of phase two would all be focused on a new centralized complex or a new centralized park. And that park would really be developed in 2 phases, if you will. And in this first phase, we would have what we call a 5-and-2 setup. So we'd have 5 baseball, softball fields in a pinwheel shape, and this is an aerial photograph of Sand Hill, I believe, and so it gives you a sense of what that would look like. And then we'd also have a football field and then a soccer field as well, and then all these fields would of course be lit so that you could use them at nighttime. Next slide. And then in addition to those 5 fields, we would then, or those 7 fields, excuse me, we'd also recommend a large playground that would be ADA accessible, as well as a centralized press box, restroom, concession building that would be in that 5-field baseball, softball complex, a number of picnic pavilions, and then of course a building to hold maintenance equipment, which would obviously be an important component of that. That's awesome. And then so phase 3 is going to would represent the beginning of the next SPLOST, which takes us to the end of the 10-year implementation plan that we were asked to look at. And so in phase 3, This would be the sort of the second phase of development, if you will, of the new centralized park. And this would include an addition of 4 baseball, softball fields, two more fields, football and a soccer field. Of course, all of them would be lit. A new press box restroom building that would be at the center of the 4-field pinwheel, and then a new picnic pavilion. So these would be a second phase of expansion of that new park. So what we wanted to do once we had the recommendations was to see, okay, can we get this to fit on one of the sites that we talked about at the public workshop back in September. And so we took the outline of the park. This is about of the parcel, which is about a little bit over 70 acres. And first started out with just some space planning, or what we call a bubble plan, to see how things would lay out in that facility. And so we went back and forth with Clarence and the rec board a little bit on this, just to get things lined up. But it does look like that we could fit everything on that particular parcel. And this is how it might lay out. We then took it a step further to do a sketch plan. So we had laid out some bubble areas, but then we wanted to take a look and say, okay, well, will this actually fit these particular fields? So we did this sketch plan to show how you could potentially fit what we're talking about in terms of the 2-phase development of the new centralized park on one of these sites, and it does appear to fit. And again, we've got the 5-field baseball, softball, pinwheel, and 1 football field and 1 soccer field would be built first in the first phase, and then the second phase would follow with the 4-field pinwheel of baseball, softball, and then another football and another soccer field. And then there's room in there for some parking and potentially some room for some other amenities in there, depending on budget and timing. So this is a summary of all 3 phases. Up on the screen again, we thought we would just leave this up on the screen for now, so folks have a point of reference to look at in terms of talking about the different phases. And I guess at this point, what I do is maybe first ask if there are any questions that I need to address about what I've presented so far. If not, then we'll open it up and let folks come and comment.
Have you put any numbers to any of this?
We have not put numbers. We've started looking at some numbers, but we have not generated final budget numbers on anything yet.
So you have no idea, like the phase 1, what it would cost to do these refurbishments and
We've got rough numbers on those, and we're still working on those, but we've come up with right now a rough number for phase 1 of somewhere around $450,000. Maybe
450.
Yeah, it may be less, and because our numbers are a little bit on the conservative side, so we think that it would probably be less than that, but that's what we've roughly come up with for phase 1.
So then phase 2, if that's 450, phase 2 then is basically built around a new site,
That's right.
except for the refurbishment of the gymnasium.
Correct.
Give me a rough number for that.
That's one that we're still working with there in terms of phase 2.
50, are we talking 100? What are we talking about?
In terms of phase 2,
No, I'm just talking about just the refurbishment and expansion of the gym.
of the gymnasium itself. It all depends on what we end up doing there.
This is not my expertise. I'm just trying to figure out where money comes from. And
Sure. That is a number that's got a lot of range on it, depending on what we decide to do with the gymnasium.
the low side,
Mr. Chairman, I guess if you don't mind, I've probably done 4 or 5 of them, and they've ranged from $400,000 if they didn't have new bathrooms, as an example, to $800,000 if they had new bathrooms and needed heating and air.
for the gymnasium.
Yes, sir.
That's to build or to refurbish?
To refurbish.
What's the new one?
How much is is a new one.
Yeah.
Uh,
Build a new one.
We're doing one right now for Union County that'll probably be metal building. Actually refurbishing and adding, and we're probably looking at 1.4, 1.5. That includes locker rooms, offices.
But that's still part of a refurbishing. I mean, $800,000 would seem like you could almost build a new one.
Would seem like a what?
You could almost build a new one.
You would think so, but
You would.
it's
Yeah, they're expensive.
it's crazy.
I
I mean,
understand.
I did one in Heard County that cost $4.5 million.
I'm pretty familiar with metal buildings.
Yeah, I mean,
So
but now you could build now if you weren't refurbished of the refurbished part. That's even more expensive. Is new construction.
That's my point.
Oh yeah, no,
You tore it down.
absolutely. No, you're right on there. You could. I promise you, the refurbishing and redoing will be as expensive, if not more expensive than the brand new one.
Patrick, they do it for 1.5 million, not 450,000.
No, it's phase one. Phase one is what he has now.
all right, and that's where I was getting at, whether or not to be refurbishing something in an existing place or whether to try and do something that's totally new.
Right.
Yeah.
The one thing that we've worked with Patrick and Clarence is that we have not defined the dollars and cents, nor have we defined the individual scope of each of these projects. And the purpose of tonight is to talk about what can come off the list and what needs to remain on the
I
list.
understand.
Yeah, they'll have to provide us with some good.
That's correct.
Yeah.
We hesitated to include numbers in this
It's too early.
just because it's too early. It's too conceptual in nature.
Absolutely.
But yet, if we're going to be moving forward, we've got to kind of have an idea as to whether or not these are goals that we can achieve and how to achieve them so that we're not sitting here 2, 3, 5 years from now and this rec board is still saying, when are we ever going to get this done?
Well, and one of the reasons, he's exactly right, one of the reasons we haven't formalized numbers is based on what came out of this meeting tonight. If somebody says, well, maybe we don't need this and maybe we don't need that, it can literally impact the project by $250,000, $300,000. So if the comments that come out of tonight, since we met with them and met with y'all twice, are relatively what you see, then we can begin to do that and make sense out of it.
You can technically bring those back to us at our next meeting.
That's correct.
Yes, ma'am.
And you probably said this and I might have missed it, but what you're presenting tonight was based on a heavy amount of input from the rec board, is that correct?
Yes, that's right. That's right.
And they're satisfied? They could.
And I would say all three phases have been gone over and lots of stuff eliminated because it wouldn't fit on one.
Come on up here, Clarence, you can talk big, but we want you on the mic.
One of the things we had really talked about and brought up in our last meeting with Patrick is whatever we come up with, it got to fit on this property. Because you know you got wish lists and we had up cutting some stuff because it wouldn't fit on any property unless we got 200 or 300 acres somewhere. And we know that's not going to be feasible from that standpoint. But like phase one, we have cut out many a thing because we want to keep a certain amount of dollars. Well, we will have a little bit of money to go for if everything happened with phase 2 and phase 3 down the line. So.
But what's left is what you guys really feel like you want to see if possible.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. And the kids, I said, we have cut a lot that nobody knows. You always want $1 million when you got $100 and go from there. So.
I'm glad you said it because I give the rec board a lot of credit because that night we were together, there was a lot of stuff in phase 2 they would have really loved, but they realized to get phase 2, they had to sacrifice in phase 1, and they did a great job of doing it. We took a lot of stuff and moved it out so we could make the dollars work.
Yeah. Phase 1 would make Sand Hill great. We won't make it platinum, but it'll make it gold. And like I told y'all as our lab public workshop, we could have spent another $1 million there when we started, but we didn't have another $1 million spent. But these upgrades will get it up to snuff to go for many years.
Well, when you when you plan it realistically, then it makes it doable. And that's what we want to make it doable.
Right.
Really make progress.
Right. And Patrick and King have been great to work with, and we're delighted whatever route we go, and whatever this is put forth in the county, we'll be happy, I promise.
I'm curious, don't go away yet. I'm curious to know what some of the things that y'all wanted that you're not able to get.
A convention type pavilion with restroom, kitchen, and meeting area, a splash pad, a skate park.
Slow down. Make it
Dog park and stuff like that.
And I think also one of the areas, this is a great example of where I think they really used great sense. Is we talked a lot about parking, and they said rather than spend money on parking, if we can live with what we've got if it's only for 3 years. Now if it's for 10 years, maybe we can't. But we can live with what we have, kind of like y'all what came out of the last plan. If you tell me,
We're recording these.
I'm very sorry.
Can't hear y'all.
That was one of the main things, parking, that stood out, that even though it'd be wonderful to identify and stripe it and drain it and that kind of stuff, that was not an area they were willing to spend money if they could get a couple of other things up there. And that was one of the great compromise type conversations we had.
That's probably smart.
So the end result, when all of this is said and done, 119 is going to wind up being practice field.
Yes, just like Auburn Annex and Pineville is now.
Sand Hill will wind up being tournaments.
A major complex along with the centralized complex.
Okay.
And we did cut out, we had a couple more fields in phase 2 and 3 that we shelled down because as we talked Patrick and talking Adam and I talked, we knew probably wouldn't work unless we could find 150 acres. And we know we can't afford 150 acres nowhere.
Well, just haven't been able to find it in the right place.
Right.
And the site that y'all are playing with, I mean, we know how big that is. We know what it can be acquired for.
Yeah.
But before I bring it to this board to discuss as to whether or not we can actually purchase it, I want to be sure that it's going to be adequate. The plans there look like it could be.
Yeah. From an athletic standpoint and everything it is, to put I call it, I think Patrick called it convention center, I call it a large pavilion with meeting room, kitchen, and a big and small meeting room, along with the other thing I said, we know unless we find 125 acres, it will not work.
I like the fact that we're talking about keeping Sand Hill as a place for tournament, for still having games and things like that.
Oh, Sand Hill will not go away, no way, shape, or form.
I like that because as large as our county is acre-wise,
Yeah.
I think it requires that.
Yeah, and probably if these phases does get approved, the next phase would be to put 4 or 5 more fields at Sand Hill.
Do we have the room to do it?
Yes, sir.
So you have 2 major.
Yeah, we got enough room to put what we got there now again with no problem.
And then you still have a separate place for practice as well.
Right. And you know, we back growing again. We grew, and then we slack off, and we back growing again. So, and I will say now, in the Springfield, Guyton, Shawnee, Kildare, and Clario area, probably 60% of our participation right now comes from those areas.
Really?
Right, but you got to remember that Rincon take care of some because of kids going to school where they go to school at. So Rincon helps the baseball, softball, which Rincon does not help with this in the county with baseball,
Well,
softball.
that's part of our service delivery agreement is we give them funds and then they
That's right.
additional.
That's right.
I'm curious to know because You know, I've been in parks at other locations when bad weather was coming and I heard the alarms go off. What do we do presently? Because I see this is lightning prediction and warning system and this
That's the
call.
same thing.
Do we have anything now?
No, we have portable handheld.
Okay.
This is one improvement that we needed desperately.
Because I was in Pooler one night before it got bad, this thing went off and it wasn't.
And they run between $5,500 and $6,000 each.
But I was glad it was there because by the time we got to cover, it came.
That's right.
It wasn't good.
I said fun kept us from doing it first time. Yeah. So,
Well,
you know, fun keeps you from doing a lot of things you want sometimes. So.
you got these kids out there swinging aluminum bats, you don't want them holding it.
And our portable little one has helped. I mean, we have not had no problems, but it'd be nice to have something that we don't manually look at it go off automatically.
All right, there's a lot of folks out here, which I presume most all of y'all are here for this purpose. Is there anybody out there got anything you want to say? Y'all like the plan? I mean, do you not? You happy? You unhappy? Got suggestions?
Is that the only land plot y'all are looking at?
Do what?
On 21 right here?
So could you come to the
We've
mic,
looked
please?
at 3 additional sites.
My name is David Kelly. Now, I was just asking, what other land plots are we even looking at? Because it looks like it's pretty jammed up on that one plot. What y'all are planning?
Well, this is the largest site that we've been able to locate. We've looked at sites that are 38 acres, some that's 40 something if you put it all together, some that people just didn't want to sell, period.
I got you.
Others that are just exorbitant in price.
It was some additional in 21, but it was like 2 or 3 different owners and some issues in them. We
That
had
was
looked
just
at
a
a couple things, and there was a piece of property that the IDA had, but in one of the last talks to them, they may have a potential buyer for the whole, like they were considering giving us a piece or selling us a piece, but it's tied up into a possibility of selling the whole area, so we can't consider that really, I don't feel like it's not available at this moment.
And how big was that one?
Well, that was not determined. It depended on what we could negotiate with the total, like big guy. It's like 1,400 acres or something like that. They were talking
Yeah,
about cutting out a section.
the potential site that they had that Lincoln was actually talking to them about was somewhere close around 300 acres, if I remember right, but a lot of that's wet.
I believe the recreation, the portion they had designated for recreation was about 120 usable acres.
Usable. You know something?
No, I was just curious on, the IDA. I had heard a little bit about that, and I was wondering how large that was, and 120, would that get everything that Clarence is wishing for? Would that get it on that plot of land?
It probably would, but again, they're not making it available at this moment.
I got you. Okay.
Also, we need something in the Springfield area instead of everything down over there. We don't have nothing from Effingham, from Springfield up on the north end.
Well, one concern about that was because that was something that I know I heavily looked at, and I believe Commissioner Keeper heavily looked at the possibility of it. But another concern was that because Rankin does provide a lot of baseball fields for us to service delivery, that it was putting it really close on top of, that area. So there were 2 or 3 things like that. But really the bottom line for me was that I don't have any idea when they'll determine whether they're going to sell the whole thing off or not. We just couldn't come to terms on that. So,
Yeah. I mean, we like the location here. It's easy access
yeah.
up and down 21, obviously. It's not too far from 95. But anytime you're considering tournament play, where it's going to generate some revenue for the county itself, you want it to be near some restaurants, hotels, and our personal opinion, the Sandhill, it's too far away from all that.
Sandhill's not the best for that, that's for sure. And I will say this, we just don't have a lot of restaurants and things like that right now, but we want to draw them. and a part of that for my way of thinking is putting something like this type of facility on 21. If we don't get it too far from when I did say this was as far north as I was willing to see it go, because for that very reason, because we want it to benefit everyone as
Sure.
much as possible, the whole community, and be a drawing aspect for restaurants and things like that, because people will be coming to it. So everything that we do like that's going to help that scenario, I believe.
Sure. And I mean, we're good with it. It's just one of those things that we want to recognize what is this new complex even going to do for us?
Sure.
So, and the Sand Hill will be more of the residents of the county playing there, and then this one may help with the tournament, where all of us really feel we're always having to drive out of town to go play these tournaments.
Yeah.
And other counties are getting our money. So, thank
We
you.
want to keep it in Effingham.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Clarence, how large is the track at 119?
28.
And when all of this started, we were fixing to spend $1 million something,
About 2 million.
yeah, on 20-something acres.
That is a great question. Let me ease those fears a little bit. We worked on this plan as late as 1 o'clock this afternoon. My graphics people, when you give them a site plan, they like to fill it up. Let me tell you, in Hurd, we did 16 fills, a gymnasium, and parking on 76 acres.
Yeah, because I will say this, your drawing made up with full.
That's right.
And I think that would be a concern to people.
That's a great point. It will not, when and if you want us to produce a rendering master plan, you'll see a lot more open space than you saw on that drawing.
It looked like there was no room for growth, like right at the beginning. and I
No,
thought-
yeah, you'll have a lot more space. We had 121 acres there, and we could only use 76 to do that many fields in the gym. So, I just wanted to, but that's a great question.
I will say, the impression I've gotten on the other track is some of it would be available. I'm not saying we do that, I just want to disclose that, 'cause I'm not under that same impression.
Right now?
Yeah. But that's the impression I'm under.
Okay. I thought we were told that they had a possible bike for, and that they didn't.
They
They're under contract.
always have
They're, yeah,
potential clients.
it's always.
Well, I'll say this as publicly as I know how to say it. I said, if they're willing, get it to the table.
Yeah, I'm not,
And they have not brought it to the table. I'm like, get it to the table so we can compare land to land.
Well,
We've
and
talked about
that,
it for 10 years.
I may bear some of that responsibility. I did ask them directly about it.
and again, I'm not opposed
That's where I'm
to
from.
this other side, I just want to disclose that I'm not under that impression.
And again, they actually have 2 prospects looking at the entire thing currently. Now, in no way did they say no. I want to make that clear. They did not ever say we have no desire to talk to you whatsoever. They simply said, I would prefer to let this thing,
That's what I was.
go through its natural progression. And if there's a opportunity to talk, they were definitely willing to have a conversation with us.
There is no place like, they got 120 acres that they're willing to give us for this price right now. Because that's what
We
we have
did
to
not
have.
get to that level. Again, he didn't say he wouldn't have those conversations. They were somewhat amenable to work in different terms, different ways, whether that was a lease payment in the future, whether it was dollars an hour, or, he felt open to several different alternatives for pursuing that. Again, what I got,
If they let these other things run its course.
that was the impression I got, is if the other things sort of ran the course, but I don't want to give him, but they never said no.
I understand. But if somebody says to me, I gotta let this run its course first, I don't know what time.
Well,
If there's something available, bring it to us.
honestly, I think, I said this the last meeting, I think the piece of property that we're looking at on Major Carter will service this county in a lot of other ways rather than just recreation field. I think it'll be a catalyst for some good growth, and I would, recreation.
Rankin and Springfield, I believe.
Uh-huh.
It was the first,
North, yes, north end as well.
it was one of the first times in that last meeting that we were in that everybody that spoke in the room agreed on one piece of property. They were like, yes, we all like that, so.
We're
I
getting
thought
to
that
you. We're getting to you.
I'm sorry.
I'm good, I'm just fixing my hair.
But, I think the IDA, and I can't speak for them, but I know the city of Rankin has tried to annex that property and acquire it for for recreation for themselves. So I think they don't want to take sides either, so I think it's a good way to,
Well, I think there's two different pieces, and I think there's one piece ranking, like a B and a C.
they want both. They want both of them in.
Well, what Wesley Corbett said to me was, they wanted one, and they'd be fine if we put the other on the one closer to Midland. I don't know which one's B and which one's C, but that's what he said to me.
They want C and D. D's got the recreation, correct? Look at it back now.
See the,
C. D is what they,
I'm just saying what he said to me.
This D is in there, water.
He doesn't. He said there were negotiations for one of the pieces right now.
what you got to say?
Craig Johnson. The piece y'all are referring to, is that the track behind on McCall Road that I guess is behind essentially Lowe's? Is that the idea?
It's not right behind the piece
behind
that
Blanford Elementary.
Okay. Okay.
that's what he contacted me about, was saying, I want to be clear about it, because he read it in the paper, I think he read the paper that I said behind Lowe's, and I don't think I used that word, but I could have, who knows? Because it's behind Lowe's, but I didn't mean immediately behind Lowe's, I meant further back. So the piece that we were actually talking about is the piece at Midland, which is it track D?
Track C.
Track C.
It's directly behind Blanford Elementary. That's the part that they have on their master plans
Right.
designated for recreation, and that's
Okay.
what I told them about it.
Okay. All right. I get, our reason for kind of trying to, we're looking at this track here is, I know, and we're all echoing it, is to try to centralize a park. And basically, I think the hospital is the smack dab center of Effingham County. Yeah, Rinkin, they have their own organization. We do pull from both. We do play each other back and forth. So moving it to that site, the IDA site, would kind of be basically defeating the purpose that we're trying to do as far as get something central for the Callao, Kildare, Egypt, North End area. We got a 5-foot sand hill. We're fixing to really improve it if we can get everything figured out and the money's found. And then this would be a centralized park for Effingham County. Could be a lot more, these things we took off our wish list. They could be put back if we can, shave some money on some of these other facilities. But our main focus as far as the board that we've really talked about and with Patrick and King is keeping something centralized where, regardless of where you live, if you're on the south end or you're on the north end, both of you are traveling pretty much the same distance. Thank you.
I'm making a comment. It would be nice to have our hotel around pool up Fort Wentworth in Effingham County where we could put a site, a complex. Not gonna happen. Hadn't happened. Everything we do at Sand Hill does benefit Pool and Fort Wentworth. But until we got Sand Hill, we didn't have anything. We do draw many people around. They do spend some money in Effingham County. They probably spend more in Pool and Fort Wentworth.
I really do personally honestly believe that if we have a nice facility on a place like Highway 21 that it's very visible, it's a nice facility, it has good ingress and egress, and you're getting in and out, it's well seen, it can help. People will want to come to that.
I agree wholeheartedly with
And
that.
it can help create for the north end and the south end.
Right.
And that's what we all want.
And one day,
We all want.
we're gonna see Springfield and Rankin connect.
Should be what we all want.
And we're gonna see Rankin and Garden City connect. I mean, one day we'll see it, and we may not see it, but our grand and great grand may see it.
Just skip over Fort Wentworth.
Well, Fort Wentworth, I mean, Fort Wentworth growing away from that city, heart of that city anyway now, so.
When you're talking about signage, I mean, the IDA property, I know that's what they have designated there on their master plan. You don't know what kind of industry is going to be there. You really don't. I don't know if that's where you really want a lot of kids going. I don't know. And because I don't know what's going to happen to the land, I would be against it. I like this piece of property. I know that it can be bought, which others that we looked at, they won't sell.
And the good part about, if this property become available and is available, where are you gonna find a 4-lane highway that run by it? With the infrastructure already there. As nice of the land, the other 30, 40, 50 acre we look at and thought about, gotta have major site work.
It's already cleared.
So you're looking at millions and millions of dollars to get a potential of what 21 property is.
And this piece of property looks to me like, and I'm not the engineer, but there are wetlands on the corners of it, but the property just has a nice natural fall to it that we shouldn't have drainage issues.
And the wetlands can be turned into a walking trail and stuff with very little work. So you can use the wetlands in the long run.
Well, and there may be property adjacent to this that can be purchased, but we need to know that this is the workable plan that the rec board wants, and this commission is behind purchasing that land, and that it's doable before we start contacting other people to find out if we can maybe pick up another 5 acres here and 5 acres, that adjoin it. Part of the land on the right-hand side is for sale, but it's pricey and most of it's wetland. Part of it behind it can be purchased, just don't know what price. Part on the left can be purchased. It's exorbitant. So there's a possibility of picking up a few more acres if we needed it, and that's why, if it's not going to work, I say the same thing about this as I said for 119. We don't need to be putting money into it if it's not going to fulfill a long-term plan.
That's why I get ready to say, we already discussed it in this.
Well, this is one of the smartest things we thought about doing, versus when we were thinking about putting all that money that we were going to put into 119 versus this, there's just no comparison.
In my opinion. Yes, sir.
Hey, I'm Brad Johnson. Just my personal opinion, all this is run off of SPLOST. So we haven't voted in the SPLOST for phase 2 and phase 3, right? Correct?
Correct.
Why not skip phase 1 completely and just start putting all our money into the centralized complex instead of trying to refurbish what's been.
I think one thing that we can throw back at that, I think if I understand exactly what we've been talking about, is because what we were just saying is how we were thinking about spending so much money on the repair of 119. What a lot of the rec board and then us talked about is instead of spending all that money on some of this past loss to redo all that, that's what we're talking about, getting this land and starting this process. So basically, that's exactly where we're kind of at.
I mean, not to be rude, our facilities have been in terrible shape for years. And we might as well start focusing our efforts into a new facility from this point forward and saving our money on the rest of the stuff.
What they did at the last meeting was they decided all this money that we were going to spend, we're going to have to do some repair. Let's scale that way down and do the bare bones of what we have to do repair. And let's take this money and put on doing a big project. And that's, so your question is, that's what we are doing. That's what it, yeah.
All right, thanks.
So that's good. Thanks. Good to know we're thinking on the same lines.
Remind me, Clarence, we were talking about spending 1.7 million or something like that.
Well, that included the land purchase, didn't it?
Yeah. Well, we got over 1,000.
There was no land.
It also contemplated number 11, which is refurbish and expand the gymnasium.
Right.
Hi, my name is Deidre Ford. I just want to express my appreciation for doing this study, first of all. I've lived in the county all my life, and I played as a little girl all the way, and I've coached at the high school and still coach today. And I do agree that some of the areas do need to be fixed, and we do need to move forward. As my children now go and play, we go to other areas that are very nice, and you see additional things like the splash pad that Coach Morgan brought up. And that is able to generate more money for that area. But having an area that is centralized, I do believe that if you build it, they will come. And I don't know a lot about building an area, but I do know about kids. And for our county, we need to focus on what's right for our kids. And having proper areas for them to play ball is one way to get the kids doing what we need them to do. Working as a team, and in learning about life and doing something that's positive. So I do appreciate all the work that's gone into this, and I do have the vision that we can get to a better place. But I'm ready to get started.
I want to see something happen.
You know,
We are ready to.
so, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We are cash ready, just like you.
The only thing I did fault, maybe what you said a little bit, was the parking. I don't know if we want to put that off too far. I mean, to me, it's a safety issue, having scattered parking. That may be something sooner than later. To me, I've seen here instances.
And that's a really good point. And I think that we've got some different ways that we can address the parking. And there's different levels of parking. I mean, it's one thing to have fully striped and asphalt paved parking. That's going to be one cost. And then, there's another option to do, maybe more gravel parking. But that is also more organized and well delineated so people know where to park. So there's, obviously we've got some room to work within some different options depending on budget. But we also, that was why it was an important recommendation for us, is to have some organized, centralized parking.
And I see what y'all are saying.
That's an important safety thing for all the users of a facility.
And I think that's why so much area is left for parking, because we want parking better than we ever have.
Well, I appreciate the hard work that you guys have done, because it's helpful to us that you've been able to come up with a plan where you've already sized down some things and attempted to be realistic, and still that we can provide, but at the same time still providing the facilities that we want to start with for people.
Phil, I just want to clarify. When you were talking about the parking we cut out was at the existing facilities, not the new facilities?
No,
Okay.
existing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would hope the proposal would have that from the get-go.
Phase one, think we can do it for $450?
Yeah, no.
And that's going to, and this is doing nothing at 119.
Recession of renovating restroom and putting up a lightning detection.
A what?
And a lightning detection, so we're gonna be using that for, say, phase two happened, we're gonna still be using that for everything, 2, 3, 4 years.
Sure.
Is it safe enough for them to bring us numbers? Is there something we plan?
What do you say it costs $5,000 to $6,000 to put that in?
Yeah, it'd be $5,000, $6,000, but it'd be well spent.
Yes.
And just to address one thing about the cost item, just to give you an example, one of the things that we've looked at is with the renovating the restrooms and concessions at 119. And we've put CHA put a conservative price on it. That was one value, and then we could probably do, a little bit lesser than that, but it would still be nice. Ours assumed more of a renovation, replacing all the toilets and fixtures and things like that. Maybe you decide you don't want to do that, and you just want to replace a couple sinks and repaint. So there's some variance in there. So to your point, when we're looking at 450, that's with some of our more conservative numbers in there.
Well, and I think to have a good understanding so that we're clear is that we are attempting, and I think one reason the chairman's looking for quick information on dollars is because we are ready, and we're trying to figure out, without this other SPLOST, which we will need in the future to do our future dreams, how can we start right now with what we have and get going? So I know that's why he's asking that.
Yeah, because I know how much money basically we've got. I know what that land can be purchased for. And I'm ready to ask the board at our next meeting to release these funds to get this phase 1 done and to acquire that property. But I need to be sure that the property is adequate to do what we need in the long term. And then we're going to wind up spending our money. We'll have a little bit left, because I got a feeling I'm going to find a place to spend it. Hey,
We could be already spending, we have.
it's just the way it is.
Right.
But what I don't want to do is go and acquire a piece of property, have to sit here until the next flush, because that's going to be where we're going to get the money to move forward, and not have the public approve that. And then we're sitting with another piece of property that we own, and it's just sitting there, and this board is saying, when is phase 2 going to happen? Because I know that y'all have been promised things for a long period of time, and it hasn't happened.
And
And I appreciate-
board support you, Mr. Quinton.
And I appreciate y'all listening to this board. It's not me, it's this board. And letting us move through this thing, because I just hate spending that much money at a place that I still think is going to be inadequate. Now, having said all of that, listening to the number of people that you have playing on all these fields, and if this board moves forward with doing these things, because I'm tired of getting phone calls from people saying, the restrooms are inadequate, and I've got this, and I mean, I get all these calls from people about these fields, and I know I'm not by myself. But if we can show the public that we're spending their money wisely, and we're doing this, and we have a plan, then I would hope that the voting public, that I think is made up a lot of parents of kids that are playing on these fields, that we can get the next splash move, and then phase 2 will be dedicated, and we can keep moving. And this will not be an empty promise to the citizens or to this board. That's where I'm hoping.
This should really be a facility that the citizens would want to get behind. But we'll need the rec board to help show that dream to people.
And hearing lots of response since the 2 articles that came out in the Herald and Effingham now, I think you got 1,000% of the people backing what is being proposed. I got to tell you, on June the 3rd, when we would talk about moving another locale, we didn't know that was a possibility. Did you shock me? Yeah, you shocked the rec board even worse. But I saw the big future. And I told Mr. Wonder the next morning, he was up here, great idea, let's go with it. I never thought that was optional. And since the 2 articles came out, I mean, you just don't know how many positive comments have been said.
And like I tell you, I wish I could take credit for it, but Commissioner Kiefer put a bug in there, that place still wasn't going to be big enough, and that's...
And I said, it wasn't big enough 10 years ago, it won't be big enough at all. But it'd be a great practice facility.
There you go. Well, is anybody else in the rec board, anybody got anything they want to say? You just come on, fix your hair again.
I just wanted to clarify a few things, like in phase 1. I know a lot of these projects are not SPLOST usable projects. And I know some of them are in the impact fee money, that 200 and some odd thousand, and we had to be specific on how that